Good afternoon or morning, wherever you might be in this world. Welcome. We're so glad for you all to join us to the Real Table Women's History Month panel. We have some amazing panelists who will share information with us all here soon. We're going to do a couple of introductory housekeeping pieces first. So wanted to introduce ourselves as the chairs and co-chairs and co-chair elects. So my name is Michelle Soika and I use the she, her pronouns. I'm at the University of Cincinnati and I am honored to serve as a co-chair elect. Paige Hicks, who is one of our co-chairs, is unable to be here with us today, but wanted to highlight her as one of our co-chairs. And is Star on? I know she was having some technology issues.
Not yet, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't mind introducing Star on the behalf, but Star serves alongside myself, Deanna C. Hughes, she, her pronouns, as a co-chair for the Women in Housing Network. And she and Jessica does an amazing job, Jackie rather, does an amazing job with the marketing and education pieces of it. And then myself and the lovely Sierra, who I know is on with us today, does an amazing job with the membership and the sub-development committee. So we are the chair team as a whole that produces all of the things for you all. So hopefully y'all continue to give us the feedback, and I will transition to the slide on how you can continue to let us know the types of experiences you are hoping for and the things that we can be mindful to do as we're communicating via email and in our Facebook social media space. And here is how you all stay connected. Go ahead, Michelle.
Is Nicole on here? I think she was on here too. I just wanted to highlight that she's one of the co-chair elects as well.
Yes, Nicole, you made it.
I am here for a quick second. Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Faison. I am one of the co-chair elects of the Women in Housing. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all. And thank you for attending.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, so this slide that you see here is how everyone can stay connected with us. So if you have not already grabbed a screenshot or copied and pasted the Gmail information, the Facebook group information, as well as the survey, please do so and share it out to others so that we can make sure that we are giving you all exactly what you're hoping to experience. Without further ado, while we are all here in this space today, what I'm going to do is mute myself after I pass the baton to the lovely Joanne, so that we can get into the order of business, honoring her story to hear from our Karma Events Award winners, past and present.
Good afternoon, everyone. So glad that you're able to join us. We have a fantastic panel ahead for you. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from them myself, because I know they've got lots of great words of wisdom and knowledge and experience to share with all of us. I'm Joanne Goldwater. I'm the Associate Dean for Retention and Student Success at St. Mary's College of Maryland. I've been here for about 28 years now in various roles, and I have the best job on campus. Love it all the time, and looking forward to engaging with you. So please use the chat function and let us know who's here. And if you have questions or comments that you'd like to make, please use that chat function. I'm now going to ask Bonnie, would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Bonnie Prenti. I'm the Dean of Students at Ithaca College, and I have actually made my entire professional career there. So I have worked here at Ithaca for the last 34 years.
Excellent. Thank you, Bonnie. Anne-Marie, how about you?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I just want to first say what an honor it is to be on this panel with these amazing women. These are all people that I have looked up to and been inspired by my entire career. My name is Anne-Marie Klatz. I'm the Vice President of Enrollment, Marketing, and Student Success at Naropa University, which is based in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm a fully remote person. So I'm here in New York City. Hello, everybody.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Andrea?
Hello, my name is Andrea Trinkline, and Joni will laugh at me. I came out of retirement to be the interim executive director of housing and residence life at the University of Central Florida, and I've been here for about 3 months. So you can laugh at me if you look at my picture on the presenters. I'm wearing the same shirt so I don't forget who I am. So, and I'm very happy to be here and be on this panel and share information with all of you today.
Excellent, thank you. Anna.
Hello, everybody. My name is Anna Hernandez, and I am the Assistant Vice President for Housing and Residential Education at the University of South Florida. I have been here for about 12 years. Before that, I was at University of Illinois. Before that, University of Southern California, and I'm originally from New York. So I say I went coast to coast, landed in the middle. Now I'm on the tour of the South. So very happy to be with you all today.
Oh, I'm loving this. You all are so engaged. Joni.
I'm Joni Schmidt, and the reason Andrea laughed is because I am retired, but I went out of retirement for about 6 months at the University of Rhode Island. But I'm Emeritus Director of Residence Life from Central Michigan University. And like Bonnie, my whole career was at Central, where I started as an RA and retired as Director of Residence Life.
Super, thank you. Well, shall we get started with our roundtable discussion, folks? Hopefully you're okay with that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a few questions of our esteemed panelists. And our first question is this: as you think about your career in housing and how far you've come, is there a moment that you can point to that changed the trajectory of your career or propelled you to where you are today? So I'm going to ask each of our panelists to share their thoughts on this. And I think we'll go ahead and start with Anna. Anna, would you share with us?
I'm happy to. I feel like I have a dramatic moment to describe for this because it was in 2008 and I was on the top of Table Mountain in South Africa. And so I had recently gone to the University of Illinois and became involved in ACUHO because Jack Collins, who was my director at the time, was very involved and became president of ACUHO. And I had the opportunity to go on a tour of South Africa, a study tour, and doing some training. And long story that I won't bore you with, I had some travel difficulties and sort of jumped off of a plane after 24 hours and went right into a presentation. And we were talking about strategic planning. And so I wanted to hear from the people that were in the room, you know, what is the biggest challenge that you're facing? And the response was women having babies in the residence halls. And I said, oh, so students, you know, becoming pregnant, et cetera. And they're like, no, they actually are giving birth in the residence halls and hiding it because they know that they'll get kicked out. And I said, okay, so who else in the room has dealt with this issue, and you know, how can you help each other? And so that was a great interaction of, you know, understanding different issues that happen to different contexts, all within a student housing lens. But the next day we had some off time, and so I was on the top of Table Mountain, and I sort of was sitting by myself and sort of absorbing where I was, what I had just experienced, and what I was about to experience. And I said, okay, I have lots to learn, and I have a lot to offer, and I guess I'm a housing professional. I've been doing it for 12 years now, but now I think I'm a housing professional. I think this is what I do for a living. And so it was very profound. And, you know, I feel very privileged to have had that opportunity. But that was really the changing point for me in my career. Wow,
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that, Anna, and the long distance involved and all of that beauty that you were around, and it was just eye-opening. Thank you. Anne Marie, would you like to share?
Sure. I thought a lot about this, wanted to make sure I fulfilled the assignment, Joanne. And I had like all these notes written down on like, you know, it could be this or it could be that. And then this morning I decided to change it completely. So I haven't talked publicly about this, but I think it'll probably resonate with some people. So I was a vice president of student affairs here in New York City for a few years, and the pandemic happened. And probably like many of you, your world and your school and all the things that came with it completely changed. And after several months, not unlike a lot of people, I had made the at least internal decision that I was probably, my higher ed chapter had probably come to a close. And so I had made that decision internally and had made some decisions to kind of move forward and figure it out. And quite honestly, I was out of the field for 6 days. I left my job. I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I made the decision to do that. And a school in Colorado found me and said, listen, we know you probably can't get out here. We need help. Can you help us? Long story short, I said, well, I don't have something lined up just at this second, so sure. So I did it. And funny story, I was overseeing student affairs. 2 months later, the vice president for enrollment resigned. She moved on to a different position. And the president said to me, can I tell you something? I said, sure. He said, I think that you might have not been in the right division all along. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you are someone who, you love these numbers, you love these metrics, you love hitting these certain targets. I'd like you to oversee enrollment. And I said, well, I've never overseen enrollment, sir. And he said, you're smart, and I think that you can do it. And that was almost 2 years ago now. And so I think what I learned is that I've always loved our field. I came up through housing, but I've always felt a little bit like I'm not a good fit. You know, that my ideas sort of aren't the same as other people's, even though I've made great friends in this field. And I think I have finally found a place in a space where I realized that it wasn't higher ed that I didn't fit. It might have just been a series of departments where maybe it wasn't the best fit. And so my advice to folks is just to continually be open to the things you never thought were right for you.
Wow, that's great advice, Emery. And I'm glad that your president saw how smart you are, because that's something that those of us who know you know very well. You are very smart. So thank you. Andrea.
I am sort of like Anne Marie. I've changed my tune several times about what story exactly I would like to share. And I think the one that comes to mind, it's sort of unusual, but it's a story where I didn't lose my voice. I was on a committee talking about new housing and bringing new housing to a campus. And it was more of a private development setup, and the budget numbers weren't really working, and what was being proposed really wasn't going to work. And I was explaining how students would want to stay on campus and the manner in which they would stay, and it didn't really support the budget numbers that were being proposed. And I held my ground because I was really the only housing person in the room, and continue to hold my ground through a series of meetings, and also speaking out about the type of accommodations, only to find out that the development committee really wanted the project, really wanted the housing, and they wanted it no matter what, regardless of whether it would work. And so I was perceived to be a blocker, even though I knew the numbers weren't going to work on a 9-month housing accommodation. And so I was asked to be removed by the vice president from the committee because I was stating the facts. And you know, being the only female on the committee too, I think I was a blocker from their perspective. And so I decided that maybe this wasn't the best place for me. And after I was removed from the committee and basically told I was throwing sand in the sandbox, which in no way was a part of my personality, I decided maybe that institution wasn't the best place for me either, and quickly called somebody who had invited me to apply for a job at their institution, asked if it was too late to put my resume in, and was told no in an excited sort of voice, and that I needed to hurry up and get it to her, and that I did. And, you know, 2 months later, I was working at another institution. And so it's okay if you don't agree. And it's okay if you speak your mind for things that you believe in and that you know are right. And so that is my story, and it continued to propel me. My voice has continued to propel me to where I am today.
Love that. Thank you for sharing that, Andrea. And, you know, it's all about that fit. And you just shared that story so perfectly to describe that important feature for all of us. So thank you. Bonnie, what about you?
Sure. I'm going to pick a time that was earlier in my career. And when I arrived at Ithaca out of grad school, I had very clearly defined career path for myself that I felt like I learned in grad school, right? Like 2 or 3 years as an RD, and then 2 or 3 years as an assistant director, and then associate director, and then director, and then VP. And that's how my career was going to work. So I was barely on campus for 2 months when the person who did housing assignments for our campus left, and they asked me if I wanted to consider stepping into the role. And that was a position that I would have told you couldn't pay me enough to do that particular job. But, you know, I, at that point, had a fiance on campus. We were both in the same position. We couldn't live in the same apartment because we were each required to live in our own areas. And so there were some personal reasons why I took a look at the option, and I finally made a decision to try it. And that was one of several changes that I've made along the way, where I deviated from what I thought was my prescribed career path, did something I thought that I might not ever do or like, and learned some of the most valuable skills that serve me so well every day in what I'm doing now. So I would just really urge people to think about the fact that it's okay to kind of deviate from what you think is the prescribed path to get to where you're going.
I like that, deviating and trying new things, being open to trying new things. Really important point. Thanks for sharing that, Bonnie. Okay, Joni, what about you?
Well, Joanne, I'm really just enjoying listening to everyone else, but I will share that my 2 tipping points are not similar to Anna's, but on the same path, I guess, with ACUHO and pregnancy. And the first one was my involvement with at that time, the ACUHO Apartments Conference and Committee. And that gave me the opportunity to go to the ACUHO conference, where the people I knew were people in leadership roles. And so those people were strong role models for me and really got me involved from the very beginning, you know, and because, as I said, at the first conference, the only folks I knew were like the big shooters. And so it was fun to hang around with them and really truly learn from them. And the other tipping point, I guess I would say, was after I had my first son, which I have to admit was 37 years ago, but the discrimination I felt after I returned to work. And at that point, I really determined to assist other women, not just in that situation, but in any situation that they may have a concern or a problem, because we obviously have to be there for each other. And that was a very difficult time for me. And I look at my daughter-in-laws who are in the STEM fields, and I think, thank goodness, I think things have changed a great deal. Not enough, but I think they've changed a great deal since that point in my career.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Joni. You know, talking about role modeling and involvement and helping each other. That's the key to our success. Very quickly for me, I don't see one particular moment. I see a series of moments in my career. But one that does stand out for me is my first time when I was an assistant director dealing with a suicide attempt and a student who had a knife. And I stupidly asked her, hey, I need you to give me that knife. And she was sitting on a bed and she kind of threw it at me, not at me, but near me. But at that moment, once we got everything settled and she was okay and got the care she needed, I realized I could make a difference in someone's life. And that came to a point a few months later when she came up to me after graduation and thanked me for being there that night, because had I not been there, she wouldn't be graduating that day. And that was a moment that I will always remember and treasure. So, okay, let's move on to our next question. Community is everything. So within this field, how have you built your community and what does that look like for you, both using internal and external factors? Anne-Marie, would you mind sharing with us?
Sure. Just briefly on building and then nurturing. And this really struck me because I would definitely describe myself as an extrovert. However, like a lot of people, I think my social circle by intention has gotten smaller over the years. And that doesn't mean that I don't love a lot of people and adore a lot of people and want everybody to be well, but it means that I felt like I had less bandwidth to be able to maintain a lot of those strong relationships. And so, I've always have to say people like, please forgive if I can't get back. I send out a lot of Christmas cards. Some of you on this call, Vika and others, will know that that's true. And that sometimes has been my only connecting point in the last couple of chaotic years. What I will say, though, that what I have done at the beginning of my career, practices that I think that have really helped me along the way. One is that I sought to be in community with people who had been there. So when I look at my closest group of especially women friends in this field, they are all 15 to 25 years older than me. And while I didn't start out for it to be that way, gosh, I'm so glad that it did, because I would call them and say, can you believe what happened? And they were like, this is old news. This happens to everybody. And like me and my friends were like, what is happening? And so it really helped to normalize some of like the crazy things that happen in our field and our industry. Secondly, to follow up and follow through. So I would go to program presentations at different conferences to meet people who I've heard were amazing, to be able to look at their presentation, learn from them, to go up later, introduce myself, get their card. And then I'd put on my calendar a couple times a year, check in with so-and-so, right? Say hello, see what's happening. Hey, I found this article and thought of you, just to build those organic relationships in that way. But I do think as we get older, those things get harder. One thing that I've been committed to do is, for some of us, some of these colleagues have become close friends or even like family. And a bunch of us do a trip once a year, and that's just a time to unplug and be with each other. I'm in my mid 40s, and very sadly, a lot of my friends are really sick right now, are sick with diseases that maybe you would associate with people later in life. And I'll tell you that I'm really grateful that we all have each other, because they are the people who we are helping them get through that. They haven't even told some of their institutions at this point. And so I just feel really grateful and blessed to be able to have that community. The last piece of advice I would share is build your community before you need it. I think when you're younger, it's so easy to say, yeah, I've got friends, I've got hall directors I work with, but life is beautiful, but it also gets incredibly messy. And being able to build that community before you need it, I think is a really valuable thing.
Couldn't agree with you more on that one, Anne-Marie. When I got my cancer diagnosis 12 years ago, I leaned heavily on the community that I built within Housing and Residence Life, and it was life-changing for me. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay, Bonnie, what would you like to share with us?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I mean, for me, having been kind of one place my entire career, I've really focused on building community on 3 levels. One of them has been definitely seeing the importance of having a community that extends beyond Ithaca College so that I could stay connected and current in my field. And for me, they did not pay me to say this, but for me, that was ACUHO, right? Like being very actively involved in ACUHO from the time I was just a brand new housing professional, looking for opportunities to serve on committees and then to lead committees and then to be on the executive board. And I think that if you're going to be professionally engaged in a community like that, it's really important, like Anne-Marie was saying, that you follow through, that, you don't want to be the person who signs up for every committee and then develops a reputation that you actually don't follow through and do any of the work that you volunteer to do. It's really important. You're building your reputation across the country. It was important for me also to have a community on my campus. And so I was very conscious about making sure that I took advantages of opportunities to be on committees and projects and initiatives that crossed outside of the department that I actually worked in so that I could build relationships and networking community across the college. And then it was equally important to me to have a community that had nothing to do with higher education and actually had to do with having a community where I live in the Ithaca area and, being involved in things like a PTA and a church and, local things that were going on that were meaningful to me. So for me, I've needed all three of those communities and relied on all three of those communities to be well balanced and well connected and kept up to date kind of in our profession.
Love it. So true. And you both have talked about the importance of that following through. Absolutely. If you say you're going to do it, you got to follow through on it. Otherwise, please say no politely. Well said. I like that. Joni, what would you like to add to this part of the conversation?
Well, I think you'll find, like Bonnie, every time I answer, I will have something to say about ACUHO. And they didn't pay me either. And in fact, I just paid them this morning for my membership dues for another year. So there is that. But I really did find my support group through ACUHO because at CMU, there weren't very many strong women role models. And so I sought them out through the ACUHO organization. And I think a number of them probably never even knew that they were my role model because I didn't say anything to them necessarily, but I followed them. I followed their career. Some I contacted, but overall, it was just really strong women in the field that I wanted to be more like. And I hate to keep saying it, but like Bonnie too, I really feel fortunate to have pockets of people that are my good, dear friends. And I guess like Anne Marie too, through the pandemic, even though I wasn't at work, people that didn't work still suffered. And not nearly as much as anyone working, believe me, I completely understand that. But it's kind of changed my view on just about everything and a number of people. But back to my original point, I still have very dear friends from grade school and high school that serve as a really strong community for me. As well as college, and then especially my professional friends that really pass over into the personal friends. And then my kids went to a small, not kids, they're old men now, but when they were kids, they went to a small Catholic school, and the importance of the school and the church and the sporting events that they were involved in. I started a group called the Mob. It was the Mothers of Boys. It was women that only had boys and just couldn't relate to daughters at all, and had spent 10 or 12 years on bleachers, happily in whatever weather there was. But that was a really strong support group as well. So again, professionally, it all goes back to ACUHO. If not for those folks, I had the amazing opportunity to serve as president and as chair of the foundation, and never would have had those opportunities if I hadn't gone to the first conference.
Yep, I can relate to all of that. Yay for ACUHO, bringing all of us together, which is really important. And yes, mothers of boys, right there with you, Joni.
I know.
So Joni, I'm going to start with you this time.
Okay.
How can we reimagine tomorrow and empower our sheroes of today within housing?
Well, I think I always say firstly, and I pretend I'm like from England or somewhere, but firstly, I think we also need to look back, and before we look forward necessarily, because I think of the things that I went through were very different than what my mother would have gone through, and hopefully now what the young women in the field are going through, or my daughter-in-laws, I always think of them as well. But I think the most important thing is that we need to support each other, that, not to compete with each other, but truly to support each other and to cheer people on when good things are happening. And as Anne Marie talked about some of the health issues, to support them. I'm involved in the American Association of University Women group here in Florida. And to most of the people on the video today, I'm old, but in this group, I'm not. So I rather enjoy it. But because of that, so many of them are going through so many issues, primarily health issues, that it's really important for us to support each other in whatever capacity we can do that. So I guess my point was to assist through difficulties, and then to promote and encourage involvements, to encourage people to apply for jobs that maybe they wouldn't have necessarily thought. Like I guess like Anne Marie was talking about with admissions, or something that maybe hadn't crossed their mind, but as an outsider, you can kind of look at someone and kind of determine what you think they're good at, maybe before they will understand or realize that. So I think, again, it's just important for us to take the time, learn people's stories, find out what's going on, because lots of times women in particular, I think, come across as everything's great when it's not. And if we can really listen to their story and try to assist them.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jenny. I appreciate that, that whole concept of looking forward and supporting each other and being there for each other and encouraging involvement so that we can all benefit from each other. I love that. Anna, do you have anything you'd like to share on this one?
Sure, thank you for the opportunity. I think that part of the responsibility that we have when we are at the table, and I think that many of the women that are on this call have shared the experience that that Andrea spoke about, of being the only woman of color that may be in the space. And so being very intentional about keeping your head up and looking who's at the table, and trying to figure out how can you bring other people to the table. I sort of call it my +1 principle. So are there opportunities where you can be in a space, right? Many of us are already at that point of leadership where we can bring people into meetings, right? There's nothing that anybody's going to say to me now if I bring somebody to the table. And it may be that they don't speak, they just observe, whatever that may be. But really looking at your career as that +1 is, how do you get to the table even if you haven't been invited? And how do you bring people to the table that haven't been invited? Another thing that I had talked about at one of the earlier calls is, there are a lot of exciting opportunities that are available and come your way as you become more senior in your career. It's not always the best thing to say yes. Sometimes it's best to give up that opportunity for yourself and identify somebody else that may be at a different stage in their career that could benefit from that, whether it is chairing a committee, whether it is being a faculty member for NHTI. I talk about a lot of the ACUHO opportunities, but even on your campuses as well, is, just because you can doesn't mean you need to. And even though you may be saying no, it doesn't mean that therefore you should delegate the next in line decision to the person that invited you. You get to keep that control as having been somebody that was invited to the table of, this person is also very skilled. I suggest that you go to the next to them on the list. And so I think that that's an important way that we can empower our colleagues on our campus and across campuses, quite honestly. I think that the other piece is the reality that there are higher expectations for women in this field, in any field. And so one of the things that I try to engage with folks is, when you get the opportunity to be at that table, be prepared and add value. Those are my two expectations of people that either are representing me or that are going to the table, is get the information that you need in order to be able to add value to that table. You get to take up space. That's an important thing. You don't need to apologize, but be prepared, do your homework, and be viewed as somebody that adds value, and therefore you would be invited back to tables on your own.
Love that. Adding the value, and just because you can doesn't mean that you need to or that you should do something. Absolutely right. Super. Thank you. Andrea, let me ask you this. Why, in your opinion, is women's empowerment important to our global progress?
Well, many may say that women have come a long way and we should be satisfied with that. But while that may be a true statement, women have come a long way, they still have not arrived 100%. And so we must still empower. And, what does that mean? It means taking an interest. I think Anna hit on a lot of the things that I would have said. So a hearty bravo to you. You are going to make me look like I am not very intelligent, but taking an interest in others personally, sharing our knowledge, mentoring, providing opportunities. There are so many that are available that we have that we don't realize as leaders, or maybe you aren't a senior housing officer, maybe you aren't an associate director or something like that. All of us have opportunities to empower others. Maybe it's even a student leader. You can empower them. And the empowerment that you do, no matter what level it is within an organization, is so important. It's allowing leaders, whether they're young or mid-level or whatever, it's allowing them to believe in themselves. It's allowing them to start to develop or enhance their skill set to better themselves, to have more self-confidence, to believe that yes, they can do what they can do. And maybe it's bringing them to meetings. Maybe it's asking them to present with you on a topic. That is one of my favorite things to do from an empowerment perspective, or it was when I was working full-time in my regular life before retirement. Finding younger professionals. I love to present. It's my way to give back to the profession. And so, and I feel like I always did a pretty good job with it, but I would find younger professionals who didn't have a lot of presenting experience and ask them, hey, you want to present a program with me at our regional conference? Or I know you talked about wanting to go to ACUHO. And sure, yeah, what should we present on? And we would meet, we'd talk about it. It was a great time for me to formally or informally interact with possibly a younger colleague in the organization and talk about topics, come up with something, talk about how I present, how I put together a PowerPoint, or whatever the case may be, going through the process. And, I look now at some of the people that I've done that with and what they're doing today. And I know I had to rib on an individual who was presenting on and big ACUHO international roundtable or something. And I'm like, look at you, you little rock star, and how far you've come. And her response to me was, taught by the best. And and it was somebody that way back when I worked with her. We did our first presentation, and she's long past me. So it's just doing some of those that that's my good simple example. Anna talks about taking people to meetings. I've done that too. And don't talk unless you've got something good to say. Other than that, keep your mouth shut and pay attention. Learn from the experiences. And so we have so many opportunities, but we have to do that for our global progress. And we can't give up, because there's so much more that needs to be accomplished. And like I said, presenting is a good example, but there are so many others: going to meetings, helping, co-writing on papers, and not having somebody write a paper and you put your name down as a co-writer. That's not what I have. That's not what I mean by that. But we have knowledge, we have development all kinds of things that we can do with women in our organizations, that we meet on committees, all those sorts of things. And we can take advantage of that and help empower. And I go back to ACUHO just like so many other people, and this is not my plug. And hey, Joni, I have my invoice to re-up my membership too. So I need to pay it, but you know, they still let me register. I don't know if they're confused because I'm under Central Florida's membership, but anyway, you know, there are so many things that we can do. And I look back on my early days of being part of some major committees that I wasn't sure how I got on them, but the people that I met and were a part of who helped empower me so that I could have such fantastic experiences and meet so many people across the United States and in other countries. It was wonderful. And, you know, now many of those people are retiring or have retired, but what friendships I made. And I owe that all to ACUHO. So empower others, recognize that it is your responsibility. It will continue to be your responsibility. And I'm sure Joni's empowering people on her National Association of University Women Committee. So we don't ever give up on it. We don't ever stop.
Love it. Thank you, Andrea. You brought up so many useful points about the importance of sharing knowledge and being that mentor for other people and providing other people with needed opportunities and empowering others who are around you. So critical. And before I ask Anne-Marie to jump on this, I would like to remind folks, if you would like to ask a question from our panelists, please put it in the chat and I'll be happy to read it. Same question to you, Anne-Marie. Why is women's empowerment so important to our global progress?
Well, this is unpopular to say, but that usually doesn't stop me. You know, I think the same problems that other industries have, we have in our industry, and folks do not want to talk about it. There are people taking credit for other people's work or other people's writing. There is inappropriate power differential behavior that happens at conferences. There are sexist comments and remarks that are made. Listen, I was 26 years old at a conference. I was running for the presidency of like an association, and there were 20 people around me, and a very high up man said to me, "You're not going to win. Women belong in the bedroom, not the boardroom." And everybody around laughed. And I kind of did my like, "I'm tough, you're stupid, whatever." And then I like went around the corner, and I'm not a crier for those of you who know me, but I like was real upset, right? And so that's at the start of my career. But I think what I was more offended by was not the thing he said, was that everybody around was in agreement. And so I think we've come a long way, and we have a long way to go, but I still see those things. You know, I'll see a young, oftentimes woman, start to get into an elevator with someone who I don't think she should be alone in an elevator with. And I'll be like, "Hey, let's go pick a coffee or something." You know, that stuff happens. I don't think it's the majority. I think it's a small minority in our field, but we have to recognize that we're still not where we need to be. I think the Me Too movement has helped a lot and really moving us forward, but we have a long way to go. Many of you know I did my dissertation work on the journey of female college presidents, and all of them shared these kinds of stories, and honestly, quite awful stories, given the fact that they're a generation or two above me. They took it as normal. We know differently now. And so what I would ask you is that while we've come a long way, the best thing that you can do is to not laugh, is to not shy away, and to show that person the kind of support that you can give. And so that's my commitment to our field and to the women in our field for as long as I'm in this industry. And I think we have to be, if anything that the world has showed us in the last 5 years, is that this is the time to support and to believe and to help women whenever we need it. So sorry, not to bring the tone of empowerment down a notch or to be a downer, but I do think that there are some realities that I think we all have to own our power as women. We've never had more power or more ability to use our voice than now. And I would just encourage you to use that.
Absolutely important that we have to use our voices for ourselves and for those around us. You brought that point home to us. Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. Folks, anyone have any questions before I lead us into our last question of the afternoon? If so, now would be the time to unmute yourself if you want, or to put it in the chat. I'm so impressed with the words of wisdom and experiences that my colleagues have been sharing. This has been great. So let me go into our last question. Folks, how would you like to be remembered within the field? Let's go ahead and we'll start with Andrea. How about you starting us off?
That's a good question. I guess I'd like to be remembered as somebody who was willing to invest in others, and especially somebody who took it upon herself to help advance women. Short and sweet.
Love it. Thank you. Anne Marie, how about you?
In that same dissertation work that I mentioned, a female president told me being risk averse has no rewards. And I have never shied away from a risk. And I think that the whole piece about if something no longer serves you, you have to walk away, whether that's personally or professionally, has been something that I've always kept close to my heart. So I'd want to be known as someone who, like Andrea, invested in others, but also was not afraid to take risks, because I have found, in my opinion, that they typically have great rewards.
Very true. That's awesome. Thank you. Bonnie, would you like to share with us, please?
Sure. I think for me, I mean, of course, I want to be known for doing really, really good work, but more importantly, I want to be known for doing really good work. At the same time, always remembering that the relationships and people who are closest to me come first, so that I was able to balance really good work with being a good partner and a good mother and a good professional and role model for colleagues and that kind of thing. So it's finding the right balance between excellent work and really strong and valued relationships.
Love that. Relationships first. That is really critical. And that helps us also think about that work-life balance that we all espouse to. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. Joni, would you like to share, please?
Sure. I was going to say, when Andrea said short and sweet, that I guess that would be kind of my life. But in addition, excuse me, I'd like to be remembered as a fun person who worked hard and was really fortunate to have a rich diversity of friends.
Love that.
My neck is going to hurt tonight because I am just agreeing with everything you folks say, you know, that I find truth in every statement that you've made.
I would agree with that. Absolutely right. Having fun, working hard, playing hard, and surrounding yourself with good people.
And I feel like I haven't been out in like 2 years, so I get a little teary here. So the more you talk, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, that's gonna make me happy, right? And it does.
And I'm glad to hear that. Anna, what about you?
So when you first asked the question, my immediate response was, well, I think I'd just like to be remembered. And really what that means for me is not something grandiose, but just that whatever interaction that I had made a difference, that I had an impact. You know, it's not a big reward. It's just, okay, I opened that door, or they learned something from a presentation, or, you know, I said hello to them when they sat next to me at the conference, you know, those kinds of things. So, you know, obviously I would like to, you know, my reputation to be, you know, caring and competent professional, but really, you know, if somebody remembers me, then hopefully it's in some capacity that I had an impact and helped in their journey some way.
Love that. Thank you. And that makes me think of a motto that I have tried to live on in my life. And it's taken from a verse in the musical Pippin, and it's from the song My Corner of the Sky. And the line is, don't you see, I want my life to be something more than long. And I have tried to live my life so that it's got meaning, and that I've been able to impact others in a positive way, and to be passionate about what I do. But it's really important to me to pay it forward, because there have been so many people who have done so much to get me to this point that I want to be that person for other people. But to leave this place just a little bit better than it was before. So thank you all. This has been absolutely amazing. I have known all of these women for years, and I have learned so many new things about each one of you this afternoon. It's been fantastic. I've got a page full of notes here, and there's no way for me to summarize everything in just a couple minutes, but you have been so good at sharing some really useful advice with all of us. Be the strong women for other women to follow. Build that community beyond your college, but also at your college. Follow through on what you say you're going to do. Get the information that you need and then bring it with you to the table and bring other people with you to the table. Build the community before you need it. These are great words of wisdom, and you have lived it. Each one of you have left your mark in so many different ways on so many different people. Think about the hundreds and thousands of people that your life has touched. It's just amazing. So thank you. It's a pleasure to be with all of you today. And I'm so impressed with you, and I appreciate all of you very, very much. I'm so glad that we are in each other's lives. And I hope everybody who is here listening to this discussion has been able to take some nugget of truth from each one of you, because it's been wonderful. So on that point, let's see, I believe I'm throwing this back to Michelle. So Michelle, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you so much to everyone, and to Joanne for moderating the session. I too took so much away from this, so I'm super appreciative. My daughter even came home from school and said, "Who are you listening to?" So you had an impact on her as well. So thanks for that. We are going to put in this chat, I just put in there a form that we have for our mentor-mentee initiative. And I'm going to put a second link in here as well, which is the spreadsheet. So when you fill out the form, then it dumps into a spreadsheet. And our mentor-mentee partner initiative, is one that we really love, and it's an opportunity for women to continue to connect. So if you haven't already, we encourage you to fill out the form and then jump over to the spreadsheet and take a look at who is there and wanting to connect and interested in connecting with others. So we would love for folks to get excited about that. We will also be sending out an assessment or a survey after this, just to collect ideas. There's a participant survey right there. And we will get that out to folks to give us some feedback on our session. We'd love to hear your thoughts and what other ideas you might have for sessions in the future. Our next one is in April. We know that's a very busy time for many folks as we start to wind down the academic year, but it's truly just going to be a time for us to connect and commiserate, and hopefully enter the summer into a really good space of connecting with others. Thank you, Deanna. It's April 27th. At 3 p.m. Eastern. So it'll just be an informal connection. So I think that's everything. Check the chat box for the hyperlinks. And again, thank you all so much for our panelists and our moderator for your wisdom, but also for those who chimed in and contributed in the chat box as well. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.